We have a huge development in the current antitrust case that we need to talk about. NASCAR is also bringing back the 750 horsepower package in 2026, and a couple big names have been dropped out of my most recent power rankings. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talkin NASCAR. I am your host, Andrew. Hope your week has been a good one. Hope your weekend has gone off to a great start. Thank you for joining me on this Saturday evening, Saturday night, whatever you want to call it. I'm recording this just before the Milwaukee Brewers Game 5 against the Chicago Cubs, so I'm trying to get this episode out right before that. Hopefully I don't run out of time here, but we got a lot to cover in the NASCAR world over the last week that I missed. Just been so busy with a lot of stuff, but again, a lot of stuff that I got to cover here. Let's just go ahead and jump straight into it. Starting us off here with a little bit of silly season news here. Harrison Burton announced that he will not be returning to AM racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, soon to be the NASCAR O'Reilly Series in 2026. Harrison is the son of the former NASCAR Cup Series driver Jeff Burton, now currently in the broadcast booth for NBC. Sorry, I just had a couldn't pronounce booth there for a second. That's not good. But either way, Harrison Burton, son of Jeff Burton, former NASCAR Cup Series winner, I believe, Jeff Burton. But Harrison Burton back in the NASCAR Xfinity Series for the first time since 2021. He spent the last 2 seasons, I believe, with the Wood brothers in the NASCAR Cup Series, driving the number 21 car that Josh Berry actually currently drives. But this year he jumped back down to the Xfinity Series with AM Racing in the number 25 car after some disappointing seasons in the NASCAR Cup Series. But Harrison Burton, I think, is a very talented driver. He's only 25 years old and has a lot of potential. And I believe that if you put him in the right car, Harrison Burton could flourish potentially somewhere else. Now, the reason that got Harrison Burton up to the Cup Series in the first place, just a little bit of backstory here, is that he won 4 NASCAR Xfinity Series races, I believe, in 2020. I believe 2020 or 2021 got promoted to the Cup Series after being with Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series. Got plucked up by Ford to drive in the 21 car for the Wood brothers. Jumped back down to the Xfinity Series, still with Ford, and this year he announced that he will not be returning to that seat next season with AM Racing. Now, there's been some rumors going around recently that Harrison Burton could be rejoining Toyota. That's the most recent rumor that came out. Originally, when he first made this statement, he put a statement out on, I believe it was on X, with a full written statement, full post, thanking all the owners of AM Racing for giving him this opportunity, thanking all his partners and sponsors. But the thing that really stuck out was you have this little picture of Harrison Burton, probably propped up against a hauler, just leaning up against it. He's dressed out in his fire suit with Dex Imaging. The thing that stuck out, though, is that he is not going to be returning to Ford. There is no Ford emblem on the fire suit, and Harrison did say that he is ready to share his 2026 plans very, very soon. And originally, many people thought he would be heading over to Junior Motorsports after Connor Zilisch got promoted, and it was announced that Carson Kvapil won't be full-time in that seat. Instead, he'll be sharing a ride with Connor Zilisch, and maybe potentially Harrison Burton could be driving for the Wood brothers, or I mean, excuse me, Junior Motorsports in the 9 car that Daniel Suarez and as well Shane Van Gisbergen and Ross Chastain, they all drove this season. So that was a potential landing spot, but it does sound like now that Toyota could be the landing spot for Harrison Burton. And this would be a very cool reunion for Harrison Burton. And this could potentially put him in line for a potential ride. I'm thinking of Legacy Motor Clubs, speaking of cup options, because Legacy has said they want to expand to a third full-time car. You never know what could go on with the antitrust case, which we will talk about very, very soon because we did get a new update on this. But for Harrison, there are still so many options left on the table. There's still a lot of time left in the NASCAR silly season, so we're just going to have to wait and see where Harrison Burton will end up for 2026. Sticking with the theme of driver news specifically, Nice Motorsports announced that Tyler Reef, 18 years old, will be making his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut next weekend at Talladega in the Craftsman Truck Series. He'll be driving the number 41 truck, which has kind of been that all-star truck for Nice Motorsports. And Tyler Reef currently full-time in the NASCAR, or excuse me, not the NASCAR, the ARCA Menard Series this season. And Tyler Reef, again, 18 years old, actually made his mark a couple years ago when he was 16 years old when he won an ARCA Menard Series race. I believe that was on the East Series. I believe the ARCA Menard Series East Series. But either way, Tyler Reef kind of flying under the radar as a NASCAR prospect, but very excited to see what he can do in his first Craftsman Truck Series start next week. So we'll have to see how he does. Good luck to Tanner Reef, though. Tyler Reef, excuse me. I just realized that I said his name wrong. And sticking with the Craftsman Truck Series, Brett Holmes announced that he'll be returning to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series with Tricon Garage in the #1 truck next weekend at Talladega as well. Brett Holmes, 2 years ago, I believe, was full-time in the Craftsman Truck Series with his own race team, Brett Holmes Racing, which I believe started with an ARCA Menard Series team, eventually worked his way up into being a full-time Craftsman Truck Series team, and along with Stuart Friesen and Kyle Busch for a good amount of time before Kyle Busch sold his team to Spire, Brett Holmes was still making a good living as a Craftsman Truck Series driver owner. He wasn't always running the best, but you'd have a really good standout performance here and there. So, and Brett Holmes 2 years ago actually sold his assets and shut down his team. I believe sold all the assets to Hettinger Racing, which drove the Ford truck, I believe, but only made a couple starts, like finished out the rest of that season, but showed up only for Daytona, I believe, this season with Mason Massey. So they haven't really done much, but good to see Brett Holmes back in NASCAR. At the time, I kind of tabbed him or kind of thought that he could be ending up in a full-time truck, either with Toyota, like potentially, I believe it was Hattori before their owner passed away, and maybe Tricon he could get a couple starts with because that's what Tricon has done in these past couple years with that one truck, just kind of pieced together a bunch of drivers to fill out a full schedule. So good to see Brett Holmes back in NASCAR once again. And as well, J.J. Yaley will be returning to the Craftsman Truck Series for the first time since 2020 with Spire Motorsports in the #7 truck. So this is a great opportunity for J.J. Yaley. J.J. Yaley, so far this season, has mostly made starts in the NASCAR Cup Series with the 44 car for NY Racing. He did a couple starts last year, and most recently, his last full-time opportunity, if you want to call it that, I believe was in 2022 with MBM Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, driving the 66 car. And more recent than that, JJ Yaley was the primary driver for Rick Ware Racing's #15 car and the 51 car after Cody Ware got into some legal trouble. But I like what Spire Motorsports is doing here with that 7 truck. You're giving opportunities to guys that don't really get these big opportunities often. Like they put BJ McLeod in one of their trucks a couple weeks ago, and he didn't run great, but it was a great opportunity for both BJ and his brand and his brands, like his new roller coaster that he's been working on. I believe that it was a great opportunity for them. I believe Patrick Emmerling made some starts, and Patrick Emmerling was a driver owner, I believe, partnered with Joey Gase. He's been doing some stuff with, I believe, SS Greenlight Racing as of late, and also now he's making starts in the Truck Series with Spire. So this is all really good stuff that I believe Spire is doing, giving guys opportunities that they normally wouldn't have. So for JJ, this is a great move, potential opportunity to get him another full-time seat in any of the 3 series, because I think JJ Yaley doesn't bring a lot of the sponsor support, but JJ Yeley is a veteran of NASCAR, former top prospect with Joe Gibbs Racing, I believe, back in the early 2010s. But for JJ, again, great opportunity for him. Hope he does well next weekend at Talladega. And one final bit of driver news here before we move on to some really big stories and topics that I want to talk about here. Catherine Legge announced that she will be driving in the 78 car for Live Fast Motorsports. Speak of the devil for BJ McLeod, who's the owner of that 78 car. But Catherine Legge will be making, I believe, her 5th start of the year. I could be wrong on that. Someone might have to check me in the comments below. But Catherine Legge has already made a couple starts this year. I would say has steadily improved. I mean, we all know the controversy that happened, if you weren't unfamiliar, at Phoenix Raceway in her first NASCAR Cup Series start. She spun out on her own off turn 2, I believe, a couple times. Actually involved Daniel Suarez and kind of ruined Daniel Suarez's day. And in the Xfinity Series, not related to her Cup Series opportunities, at Rockingham, a very difficult track. She was out on track, I believe, in the 35 car for Joey Gase Motorsports after Catherine Legge failed to qualify her way in with Jordan Anderson Racing and wrecked, I believe, Casey Kane driving a third Richard Childress Racing Xfinity car. So it was not a good look for Catherine Legge at all, but she's steadily improved. I mean, she qualified into the Chicago Street Race over Corey Heim, a legitimate NASCAR prospect, driving a legitimate third NASCAR Cup Series car for a legitimate NASCAR Cup Series team of 2311 Racing. Pretty bad look if you're Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin getting beat by Catherine Legge and BJ McLeod's Live Fast Motorsports. But regardless, Catherine Legge is back in the seat this week. Probably won't do much out on track, to be frank, but at least hopefully she won't uh, hold up the leaders or cause any big controversy. I'm just hoping that we don't get start of season Catherine Legge. Please, no start of season Catherine Legge. All right, let's move on to some actual topics that I want to talk about here. Starting with Joey Logano. After he raced his way into the round of 8 at the Charlotte Roval, beating out Ross Chastain, during his post race interview with NBC, he was getting booed by the entire crowd as they saw his interview, I believe, on the big screen and heard over the speakers maybe as well. But they were booing Joey Logano, and he was like, and he basically just said, "Hey, what are they booing me for? What I'm getting booed? What's all this for?" And I want to make my thoughts known on this. First, if you don't like Joey Logano, I completely understand because Joey Logano has done some things that don't really deserve him to be loved among NASCAR fans, especially Matt Kenseth fans. He wrecked Matt Kenseth a couple years ago back in the day and cost Matt Kenseth chances at a championship, very much so. But Matt Kenseth did get his redemption that year. I believe that was 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Matt Kenseth did get his redemption at Martinsville, so I will say that Joey Logano fans or Joey Logano got his comeuppance there. But Joey Logano, I mean, has severely benefited from the current playoff format. The winning year in system is able to make the playoffs without running consistently every single week. He's just able to win his way in. And when it comes to playoff time, he's able to step up and say, hey, I'm good in the playoffs, but I'm not very good elsewhere. So I admit that Joey Logano maybe not the most loved driver among the garage, which is fine. You don't have to like Joey Logano, and you don't have to like the playoff format. But I respect Joey Logano for one thing and one thing only, really. He is sticking up for the thing that defined his legacy, that made him a three-time champion, especially his last two championships. He is willing to be the guy that vouches for the playoff system, for winning you're in the face of a lot of criticism and a lot of opposition. So while I severely, really do not like Joey Logano, I actually kind of feel neutral, if I'm being honest. I'm trending more towards I don't really care for Joey Logano, and I don't want to see him win a championship more specifically. I do have to respect Joey Logano for that. And I'm not saying you guys have to respect Joey Logano. I mean, I feel like you should respect Joey Logano for the reason that he is willing to face adversity in the face and not back down and not submit to it. He is willing to stand his ground. And I think that's what some NASCAR fans should really be willing to do, to accept that Joey Logano is a guy that is willing to step up and face the music and not back down. That's all I'm just saying. And I respect Joey Logano for that. Moving on, though, we have to once again talk about the antitrust case between 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports and NASCAR. We got a pretty big update this week, and over the last 2 weeks, we've had some pretty significant updates. And this week, NASCAR requested from Judge Kenneth Bell to rule that a settlement conference should be convened very, very soon between NASCAR and the teams. And that request was granted on NASCAR side of things. Judge Bell did order a settlement conference between the teams and NASCAR. Now, both sides were very much in favor of this, and the one thing that the teams, 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports, were not in favor of, the one thing they kind of pushed back on was who the mediator was of this settlement conference, Jeffrey Mishkin, who is a previously or I should say, a previous mediator for several disputes in the NBA, I believe in the NFL as well. So he's very familiar with mediating sports disputes specifically. But NASCAR voted their support for Jeffrey Mishkin being the mediator, while the teams wanted an actual judge to oversee the settlement conference. And the teams got their wish, I should say, for the most part, because Judge Kenneth Bell will be overseeing the settlement conference alongside Jeffrey Mishkin in this latest conference, and the teams voiced their support and thanks for Judge Kenneth Bell for meeting both sides in the middle. And NASCAR, I don't really think had a response for that, but I think this is a very good sign for both sides. They're willing to, I guess, kind of agree on one thing, and they are somewhat willing to come together to reach a settlement. The other thing to note here is that NASCAR was the one to make this filing, not the teams. NASCAR was. And this is very interesting because through all this time, we've seen the teams be the ones on the side of filing a lot of stuff. NASCAR filed a couple things like I believe it was some countersuits against, I believe it was Curtis Polk, for co-owner for the NASCAR team 2311 Racing against the teams overall. But this time, it was NASCAR who is the one that is making the filing here. And as we draw closer to the date of the trial, December 1st, I should say, I believe, that is a shift in leverage starting to happen because NASCAR has been very clear on this matter throughout this entire lawsuit and in pretty much their entire history. They do not want any of their private financial records available to the public, and specifically the France family does not want that. So one may have to start to wonder now, is the leverage starting to shift more towards the teams? Are they the ones that are able to play and have the favor in this current lawsuit? So that's one thing to think about as we go on here. For me, on October 21st, I'm really rooting for a settlement that will benefit both because the teams right now, it seems like, are working towards reforms of the sport and specifically permanent charters, which Richard Childress, owner of Richard Childress Racing, did voiced his support for in a filing last week when NASCAR kind of came to and responded to a filing made by the teams. I think the week before that. So the teams are going to be voicing for permanent charters right now, while NASCAR is simply trying to defend their case against the teams in all this antitrust case and prove they are not a monopoly. So I am hoping that come October 21st, we get some sign of closer reaching to a settlement between the two sides. But that's a long ways from now. So much more can happen in the 10 days before that. So stay tuned for more. I will be covering this extensively throughout the next couple weeks. On October 21st, I will be covering this as well. So stay tuned for more on this and keep your keep your eyes peeled for any more updates on social media as well. Moving on, though, to the next story I want to talk about, kind of returning to the Charlotte Roval weekend that we just had about a week ago at this point. I want to talk about something that transpired on the radio after the race, and specifically something that NASCAR did after the race. He talked to some teams about race manipulation, NASCAR did, and apparently on the radio of the 48 and 41 car, there might have been some signs of race manipulation. And my immediate thought was, man, the 41 car is doing race manipulation again. Um, yeah, that's not a very good look. For those of you who aren't aware, back in 2022, in this kind of same similar situation, you had Stewart-Haas Racing's 41 car of Cole Custer intentionally slowed down into the bus stop chicane on the backstretch to allow his teammate of Chase Briscoe, who was fighting for a round of 8 spot, to get up the inside of him and potentially move on into the next round. That did not work, however, and Chase Briscoe was still eliminated. So, and that entire 41 team, Johnny Klausmeier, was suspended by NASCAR and ended up moving up into a team management role at Stewart-Haas Racing the next season. And Cole Custer was fined. The entire team, Stewart-Haas Racing, was fined overall for race manipulation. So that was not a good thing. And that was my immediate thought when I heard that the 41 car had been involved. But apparently on the radio, the 48 car of Alex Bowman radioed to his crew chief, Blake Harris, talking about how the 41 car was kind of road blocking, I believe. I believe I'm saying this right. I only listened to the entire radio, what happened on the radio, only once. I didn't listen to it very extensively. I tried to pick out as many details as I could, but it was not very easy to pick out those kind of details. So I apologize if some of the details are maybe incorrect, and you guys are going to have to comment down below on what I maybe didn't get. But NASCAR did have the conversations with all the teams that race manipulation will not be allowed going forward, and it should not be used at all into the round of 8. And we saw this exact same thing in the round of 8 last year at Martinsville. I talked about it last week in my last show, I should say, that you had the 20 car and the 24 car of Bell and Byron being caught up in some very big controversies. You had Ross Chastain and the 3 of Austin Dillon all kind of roadblocking the 20 car, or the 23 car, I believe, Bubba Wallace for not allowing him to get through and essentially allowing William Byron to advance into the round of 12. And there was a infamous statement on the 3 car that, hey, does the 1 car know the deal? Yeah, he should, was the response from the crew chief of Justin Alexander on the 3 car. And the 1 car of Chastain was pretty much ordered by Chevrolet, along with Austin Dillon, to hold up the rest of the pack so the 24 car does not lose any more spots. Now, for Bubba Wallace in the 23 car, this is post lawsuit, by the way, for those of you who are wondering. But Bubba Wallace claimed to have a tire going down into turn 3 and 4 on the final lap, which allowed Bell to slip up the inside and gain 1 extra spot, and Bubba Wallace out of the playoffs. This was an easy move by Toyota to manipulate the race, which would allow Bell to get through and Byron to be out. However, Bell kind of sent it up the inside and rode the wall a little bit in turns 3 and 4 and ended up getting disqualified for some unsafe driving because NASCAR outlawed the wall ride made by Ross Chastain back in 2022, and apparently it was unsafe that Christopher Bell did at Martinsville last year. But similar conversations were had that manufacturers were not to give orders and no race manipulation would be allowed. And for a little while, there was a time where race manipulation wasn't as hot. I remember back in 2015 when you had Jeff Gordon getting allowed back into the chase after the Spingate scandal between Michael Waltrip Racing and that entire team. Clint Boyer spinning himself out to bring out a caution, which would allow Brian Vickers, his teammate in the 55, to make the playoffs. And for a little while after that, up until about 2022, I would say, race manipulation wasn't a thing, but now team orders, manufacturer orders are becoming a thing, and NASCAR has tried to draw the line now that manufacturing orders will not be allowed in. I hope NASCAR continue to enforce that, and we're just going to have to wait and see how that will all work out. Moving on, though, to the final story of today's show, NASCAR announced a couple days ago that they will be elevating the horsepower package to 750 horsepower at short tracks and all tracks below a mile and a half and all road courses. The entire track list that will have that horsepower increase from 670 horsepower to 750 will be Bowman Gray Stadium, Bristol Motor Speedway, the Charlotte Roval, Circuit of the Americas, Darlington Raceway, Dover Motor Speedway, Iowa Speedway, Martinsville Speedway, Nashville Superspeedway, New Hampshire Motor Speedway, North Wilkesboro Speedway, Phoenix Raceway, Richmond Raceway, Sonoma Raceway, Watkins Glen International, and Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway will all have an increase in their horsepower package in 2026. This has been something that we have all been asking for, specifically on short tracks and road courses, because the racing there has just been very stagnant, limited passing opportunities. And the hopes with this horsepower increase means that it'll be harder for the cars to drive, for the drivers at least, meaning that they'll have to let off into the corners, have to kind of corral the car a little bit more at these tracks to potentially set up for more passing opportunities, which is what we all want, and will be a big increase and step away from NASCAR's more recent kind of product goal, which is to have close, tight racing, but not really have passing and make it look good on TV, more specifically. And this was all kind of explained on the latest episode of the Dale Earnhardt Jr. Download with NASCAR president Steve O'Donnell. And in that interview, he also described that if NASCAR wanted to increase the horsepower any more from 750, that it would cost them upwards of $40 million to like $50 million, I believe, which you might be hearing that and thinking that, wow, that's a steep price. And yeah, that is a pretty steep price because now this will cost the teams a little bit more. They'll have to have more wear and tear on those engines, maybe have to get more engines frequently. And the whole point of bringing the horsepower down from 750 to like the 550 horsepower package back in 2021 to 670 was to limit the cost for the team and bring costs down for the teams, because that's what teams were really upset about at the time, is that, oh man, costs are skyrocketing. We need a way for things to be brought down. And this was NASCAR's way of doing that. The problem was the racing was just so bad, especially with the 550 horsepower package, especially on intermediates. Steve O'Donnell in this interview as well also continued to fuel NASCAR's new kind of scheme and outlook for the sport of going back to the roots, if you know what I mean. In recent years, NASCAR has kind of tried to expand and be so many different things, like recently they've tried to go back to the grassroots with bringing back North Wilkesboro and Bowman Gray Stadium. Martinsville's still been there, but they've also been trying to bring in new fans with tracks like the Chicago Street Race, the LA Memorial Coliseum. Remember as well, they also had the rumors of racing in Philadelphia at like a football stadium. So all those rumors were trying to bring in new fans, but the problem was NASCAR was kind of ignoring their older fans. And Steve O'Donnell in this interview also kind of brought that up as well, saying that we try to be too many things at once. So now we're trying to focus on this one thing, getting back to our roots, connecting back with our original fans, our fans in the Carolinas, which I have no problem with. I mean, I'm a newer fan, and I'm a minority in that saying that I'm a new fan who lives in Wisconsin in the Midwest, where the racing we got is more so short track dirt racing with no affiliation to any of the dirt racing in the Carolinas. But for NASCAR in general, I like this move. This really helps the sport, I believe, reconnect with the fans, make the racing product better, which is the end all be all what we want in the end. Now, do I think that this horsepower increase will dramatically change the racing? No, probably not. At road courses, I think that the racing product will be a little bit better. At short tracks, possibly. I like Iowa, kind of that high banking could be a little bit better. Dover, I think, might be a little bit better. Darlington is going to be a lot harder now because was already a tough track to pass at, but now adding this horsepower increase, that's going to be very, very tough. Gateway, I mean, I'm not really sure. Richmond, I think, will be a little bit better racing wise. I thought North Wilkesboro already was pretty good racing in general, so I think it'll be fine. It might honestly get a little bit better. New Hampshire, I mean, we're going to have to wait and see. I think the tires are probably going to play a big part in how that track races. Martinsville, again, the tires going to be a big factor overall. Same with Bowman Gray. Bristol, I don't know really how Bristol's going to do. In recent years with this limited horsepower, it hasn't been great, but I think we're going to have to wait and see. And like the Roval, Circuit of the Americas, all the road courses, I think the racing should be pretty good there as well, if not better. But now it is time to move on to my final segment of today's show, my NASCAR Cup Series power rankings. Every week, I come in here to this show and rank the top 10 fastest drivers and teams in the NASCAR Cup Series. This time, it will be after the Charlotte Roval, and I had a couple big names drop out of my power rankings this week, so you guys better stay tuned to see if your favorite driver made the cut this week. Starting off here with a couple honorable mentions here. First, I got William Byron, and you might be thinking I'm crazy, but William Byron has not led a lap since his win at Iowa. That was back in August. That has been an incredible, super bad streak for William Byron. He still is in the round of 8. He was able to move on because he won the regular season championship, but if he wants to get to the championship 4, he's really going to have to step up starting this week at Las Vegas. I do have a little bit of faith in William Byron, but I just can't put him in over some guys that actually had some good races at the Charlotte Roval and heading into Las Vegas. The others being the 2311 racing cars, Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick. Both didn't do horrible. Bubba did actually pretty good on a road course for his standards, but just didn't do enough to get on into the round of 8. And same for Reddick, who started on pole and I thought would be a guy that would break my top 10 this week, but just couldn't compete with Shane Van Gisbergen. Pit strategy by Billy Scott was not very good, by the way, either. Stayed out on older tires and just lost all his track position and really could not recover. So my honorable mentions this week are William Byron, Bubba Wallace, and Tyler Reddick. At number 10, I have Shane Van Gisbergen, though. He obviously won the Charlotte Roval after somehow not qualifying on pole, but this week he deserves to be in the top 10 just a little bit more because he had a top 10 at Kansas. You guys got to remember that. You got to put some respect on Shane Van Gisbergen's name. Even though he's won 5 straight road course races, he did get a top 10 at Kansas and had top 10 speed at New Hampshire. 3 straight weeks where he's had top 10 speed at 3 straight tracks, 2 of which were ovals, and New Hampshire's a pretty tough oval, I will say that. So SVG deserves to be my top 10 this week. Will he stay in my top 10? Probably not past this week, but anything can happen. SVG at 10, though. At number 9, I have his teammate of Ross Chastain. I know the finish won't really reflect what his race was, but Ross Chastain, despite some pit road errors, a bunch of other errors, some speeding penalties, missing the pit road exit, besides all those, Ross Chastain did everything he could to advance into the round of 8. It just wasn't meant to be. And he, coming off of 2 straight really good weeks, New Hampshire and Kansas both really good finishes, a 9th at New Hampshire and 11th at Kansas. Were both really good races, and he really needed those races too. He just needed really to execute at the Roval, and unfortunately he didn't. But Chastain at 9 had a lot of good speed over these last 3 weeks. He's pretty deserving, in my opinion, at least. At number 8, though, I have Chris Buescher. Got a quiet top 5 finish at the Roval. Did qualify in 5th, finished in 4th, and pretty much ran up inside the top 10 pretty much all day. Pretty 2 quiet weeks, but that's what Buescher has been pretty much all year. Quietly, very, very consistent. Quietly, he's been kind of like a Chase Elliott this year, except Elliott got a win, and Chris Buescher didn't really start out as slow and has been a little bit less consistent, but Elliott. But Buescher, a top 5 heading into Vegas. He's been okay there. I mean, it's a mile and a half. We'll have to wait and see how Buescher does, but a top 5 finish, I think, warrants a top 10 spot in my power rankings this week. So Buescher at 8. At number 7, excuse me, I got Joey Logano. 2 straight pretty rough finishes for Joey Logano. The Roval didn't really have a lot of speed, but used some pit strategy to get into the round of 8. Kansas didn't do himself any favors. New Hampshire and Bristol and Gateway were 3 really good races for him. All top 5 finishes. It's just, I mean, the last 2 races were not very inspiring for me, at least. But regardless, he's into the round of 8. Heading to Vegas, I mean, he wasn't very good there last year. I know he won, but again, used a little bit of pit strategy. But I mean, you can't rely on that all the time. But Logano, I mean, he made it to the round of 8. I feel like I just got to keep inside my top 10 here. He'll be at number 7. And plus, he's got maybe a little bit of momentum because he just made the round of 8. Purely on pace, you could say, without getting in via penalty. So Logano at 7. At number 6, I have Denny Hamlin. I know he's down a little bit. I mean, he was in 3rd last week. Had to drop him down a couple spots. And at the Roval, I wasn't really expecting anything. I know he did finish in 2nd at Kansas, but ever since Bristol, he's been pretty inconsistent, if I must say. Bristol finished in the 30s after being second fiddle pretty much to Kyle Larson in the spring. New Hampshire, Gibbs has been dominating there these last couple seasons, finished outside the top 10. Kansas, we all expected Hamlin to do good, but kind of choked away the victory with his teammate Bubba Wallace, his Toyota teammate, I should say. And that the Roval was not very good. But heading to Las Vegas, I'm expecting a rebound. He's in the round of 8. We'll see where Denny Hamlin can go the rest of this round. So Hamlin at 6. Next up at number 5, I have Ryan Blaney. 13th at the Roval. I mean, not bad. And Blaney won at New Hampshire. Already locked himself into the round of 8. Excuse me. Kansas didn't really have great speed. Got caught up in a wreck though. So I think Blaney did have some pretty good top 10 speed, just never really got a shot to show it. But Blaney already moved on into the round of 8. Heading to Vegas, he's been pretty good on mile and a half. He's been the best Penske driver, so we're just going to have to wait and see how Blaney will do this weekend at Vegas. But he will be at number 5 this week. At number 4, I have Chase Elliott. 3 straight top 10 finishes after a pretty mediocre race at Bristol, I will say, but since Gateway, he's got 4 top 5 finishes in the last 5 races. Very good. And 3 of those have been top 5s. Elliott has really turned it up these past couple weeks. Vegas, though, a little bit of cause for concern. I mean, he got caught up in a wreck last year, so I'm not very excited for what is yet to come at Vegas. But Elliott, anything can happen. We're heading to Martinsville. He's been very good there. And Hendrick Motorsports has been very good there in general. Talladega, he's been very good at. He actually won this race, I believe, in 2022 to lock himself into the championship 4. So Chase Elliott this round kind of shapes up to be pretty good for him. So we'll have to wait and see how Elliott does, but he'll be at 4 this week. At number 3, I have Christopher Bell. 5 straight top 10s. Wow, that was a jump, 3 to 5. But Gateway had a top 10. Bristol won. New Hampshire had a top 10. Kansas had a top 5, and same with the Roval. Along with Kyle Larson, was the only 2 drivers able really to compete with Shane Van Gisbergen for a little bit before SVG was able to just outrun them on the long run. But Bell has been on a pretty good streak recently. And heading to Vegas, we'll have to wait and see. Martinsville, don't repeat what he did last year. So this round, it's okay for Bell. I mean, Martinsville's the one I'm really highlighting for him. But for Bell, he's been very, very good as of late. Vegas should be a good track for him. We're just going to have to wait and see. But Bell at 3. At number 2, I have Chase Briscoe. finished 14th outside the top 10 at the Roval, but was battling an illness, and despite all that, still a top 15 finish is pretty good, and he'd already locked himself into the playoffs on points by the end of it and was able to just do enough, even though he was on the cut line for a good majority of that race. And until then, he was riding a streak of pretty much 5 straight top 10s, all until the Roval, where he did start inside the top 10, but couldn't really hold on to it. But Briscoe heading to Vegas, he's been probably the best driver on mile and a half consistently, alongside Hamlin and Gibbs, I would say, in my opinion. Maybe, I mean, all 4 Gibbs drivers have been pretty good on mile and a half, but I would say Briscoe and Hamlin have been the 2 standout guys. And then heading to Martinsville, he's a former dirt track racer on short tracks in Indiana, so we'll have to wait and see. But Briscoe, he's been very solid as of late. I did have to knock him down one spot because he did have a pretty lackluster finish. So Briscoe at 2. But once again, back up in number 1, I have Kyle Larson. It's been a hot minute since Larson has been the number 1 in my power rankings. I don't have to scroll up through my notes. When was Larson last in the number 1 spot? He was, oh man, I'm having to go all the way back up to, I'm looking, guys. Oh wow, he was not inside my top 10. He was never my number 1. I find that surprising that Larson was not my number 1 in my power rankings ever. I think the closest before this was 2 after the Brickyard 400. I believe that was the closest he got in my top 10 for a little bit. But now he was second last week too after Kansas, and this week he's at number 1 at the Roval. But similar to Bell, was really the only one that was able to compete with SVG for a bit before he just ended up losing it. But 3 straight top 10s at New Hampshire, Kansas, and the Roval. And Talladega is the one track that really kind of gives me a little bit of pause for concern, but he was very good at Vegas last year. I believe earlier in this spring he was able to beat Reddick. So Kyle Larson, he's been very good at Vegas. Martinsville, Hendrick Motorsports has been very good there as well. So this round shapes up really well for Larson. We'll just have to wait and see how he does though. But Larson at 1. But there you have it. That is my top 10 after the Charlotte Roval. Once again, they are Kyle Larson at 1, Chase Briscoe at 2, number 3, Christopher Bell, 4, Chase Elliott, 5, Ryan Blaney, 6, Denny Hamlin, 7, Joey Logano, 8, Chris Buescher, 9, Ross Chastain, 10, Shane Van Gisbergen, with the honorable mentions being William Byron, Bubba Wallace, and Tyler Reddick. So let me know down in the comments what you think of these power rankings. Should anyone be on this list? Should SVG be off this list, for example, or Chastain, or Logano, or Buescher? Let me know down in the comments section below. But that's going to do it for me, folks. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, if you're listening on YouTube, mostly this applies to you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel as well. And if you're listening on any other podcast platforms and you did enjoy, please consider giving a follow so you never miss another episode of this show. As well, go check out Talking Sports with Miles and Andrew, the other show I co-host with. Talk about sports, have a little bit of fun there as well. It'll be also on the same channel if you're listening on YouTube, and on all the other podcast platforms, it'll be Talking Sports with Miles and Andrew. It's a W, Miles and Andrew. Go check it out. Give it a follow. It's a lot of fun. I believe you'll really, really like it. So I'll see you very, very soon, everybody. I'll see you probably tomorrow for the post-Las Vegas race recap and review. But until then, I'll see you very, very soon. Hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Go Brewers, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your night, everybody.